All right, welcome back. So in this video, what we're going to do is take a look at how to create a service principals personal access token. So if you remember, where we were before was on the Power BI side of things, I was creating a connection um, back to Databricks using my own personal access token. But in general, that's not best practice. So we'd like to instead authenticate as if we were the service principal instead. So in order to do that, what we need to do is call the Databricks REST API to create a personal access token. However, we're not creating it for ourselves. We are creating this, I would say, on behalf of the service principal, but on behalf of is really more of an AWS thing than an Azure thing. But we're still kind of doing the same thing. So in order to do this, we have to think about where we started. We started with Microsoft Intra. That is how we created our service principal, which has a service principal ID or client ID. We also need an OAuth secret, which in combination with the ID, we can call the Databricks REST API. We have both account level and workspace level. The service principal's personal access token will be workspace level, so we'll call that REST API endpoint. And then we're going to get a service principal personal access token in return. So we can use that token to authenticate and do service principal workloads. In my case, the end goal would be to authenticate to Power BI as a service principal, but the main thing that we're concerned with right now is just getting that token in the first place, and then we'll decide what to do with it later. So we're going to need to call this endpoint. It's a post. It's just going to be very similar to the REST API calls that we did in the previous video. So let's go ahead and set this up. So I've got a notebook here, and these are some old credentials that I was putting together for the demo. So I'm going to delete those, and we'll just kind of start over fresh. First thing we need is I guess I'll go ahead and put the host ID or the host up. If I could type, that'd be nice. I'll put the host up front. That's going to be kind of the most straightforward thing. So my host is, I pick a workspace where you want your service principal to have credentials. In this case, I'm going to have my service principal connecting to my hub workspace. So I'm going to grab that hub workspace URL, and it goes all the way between HTTPS and .NET. Before I go too much further, we need to make sure that our service principal actually has permission to create a token within a workspace. So if you haven't set this permission already, do it now. So this is within the hub, or within the workspace, I should say. You pick your workspace, go to admin settings, go to workspace, admin, advanced, and you see personal access token here. First of all, it needs to be enabled. Second of all, you need to go to the permission settings, and my service principals are in the admins group. However, if they were not, you would add them here and make sure that they can use personal access tokens. Beyond that, if you are authenticated as a service principal, then whatever they are allowed to do within your workspace, that's up to you. So if you want to let them use compute, use resources in a catalog, use resources in your SQL warehouses, that's your call. Whatever you want to let them do, but the main thing is they need to have access to work with the personal access tokens in the workspace. Okay, so we are authenticating to a specific workspace. Next up, we need the client ID and the OAuth secret. So let's go not necessarily to the workspace level for this. Let's actually go to the account level. All right, so we're going to go to manage account, go to users and groups, service principals. Now I've already showed you with the service principal how we would extract their client ID and how to create an OAuth secret using Terraform. So we've already showed you that. Assuming that you've created those using Terraform, all we really care about is actually what that information is. So if you're grabbing that from your key vault, that's cool, but you can also do this through the UI. So let's go ahead and generate a secret. This is an OAuth secret. So what I'm going to do is just grab my client ID, which that is kind of already persisted. So that's not anything new, but it's just giving it to you here so you can copy it. All right, go to this. This is the client ID. Next up, we're going to grab the client's secret. I'll say I'm done. And I do have a note here that when you start copying and pasting this stuff, don't do it in plain text. Put it in a key vault, that sort of thing. But if you are looking at this because you're learning about it, just notice that the OAuth secret almost always starts with DOSE. When you get to the actual personal access tokens, they almost always start with DAPI, I think. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Next up is the endpoint. So the endpoint, I can't remember where the URL is for this, like where the docs are for this, but it's OIDC v1 / token. So I'm just creating a URL based on the combination of my host and then this endpoint. I'm going to set up a data block that is a grant type of client credentials. The scope is all APIs. So this first thing that I'm doing is creating a temporary OAuth secret or OAuth token. So my auth is going to be client ID and then the auth secret. This will be a post request, and I'm passing in that URL, which I just created, along with my data block, and then my auth, which is right here. So let's make sure to go ahead and import my request library first. Then we're going to go ahead and create my temporary OAuth response. We'll take a look at that JSON, and so you can see that this type is, the token type is bearer, and then we've got an access token, so this is temporary. So let's just grab that, and I'm going to put this, I'm going to extract that from my JSON block and just call that my OAuth token. All right, the second thing is that we need to actually call that API. So this is the create a user, it's a token, create a user token. It's a post, and it's a pretty simple little link. So I'm just going to call this my new endpoint. I'm going to combine that with my host to create the new URL. This is going to be, I'm going to have the headers with the bearer authentication of the OAuth token. And this is not mandatory, but I highly recommend you send a payload with a comment. And the comment will help me easily identify this token, so I know what it is when I'm trying to manage this later on. Let's go on ahead and take a look at the response. So, like I said, this DAPI, this is how you, I don't want to say this is how you know. You should know by extracting the token value, but when you start seeing these different types of tokens, it's kind of a dead giveaway that, hey, this is Databricks API token. And then extract the token info. This is the ID of the token. So we got the ID of the token and then the value of the token. So this, if I wanted to, is what I could go on ahead and I could pass this into my Power BI personal access token. So let's see if I can just update this, save it, see if it connects. So I think we're good on that. If I want to, I should be able to do a refresh, and that says that it's online. I should be able to rename this if I want to and say like service principal personal access token, save it, should be good, close it. So that's fine. I'm happy with that. So if I wanted to, I could just extract that token value. So JSON response, and then just grab the value out of it, print it, save it to Key Vault, whatever you want to do with it. All right, next up, I want to let you manage it. So I've already showed you how to do this once, but because I just showed you guys my personal access token, we're going to delete it. We're going to view it, we're going to delete it. So go into my workspace, go back to my user settings, go to the developer setting, access tokens, generate a new one. We'll just call this one temp. I'll give this one day to live. I'll generate this token, copy it, done. Let's see, go back to my tokens page. So I showed you how to do this in the previous video, so we're gonna go kind of fast through it. So that's my personal access token, and we're gonna call the management endpoint. Okay, 200 is good, that was successful. You don't really have to look through it this way. And then we're gonna just iterate through it. So we got a couple of tokens that are for this demo, and then we've got my temporary one. So I'm going to go ahead and first of all, let's just take a look at this, the information that comes with this. So I did not specify an expiration date for that personal access token. And so whenever you see this -1, that means that it basically lives forever. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and delete these though. So let's go on ahead and I just pulled out, I think this first ID that was the token ID for this demo. Do a response. Okay, that looks like it was successful. And we'll do it one more time for the second one. And before I delete this, I just want you to see that this is my workspace. These are my tokens. I see these other ones that I created here, but I don't see the ones that are for the service principals, which is why you should have this management API in your pocket before you get rolling with this. So let's go on ahead and delete this one as well though. So delete me, update it, should go on through, should delete it. Let's go on ahead and clear our output. We'll do a restart. I'm going to run back through this one more time. Let's run through the list. Okay, so those two temporary ones are gone. I just have this one left. So it's F843B, blah, blah, blah. That's this token right here. It's this temp one. So I just showed you that token and I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And that's that F834, like I just said. Okay, so that token's been revoked. Doesn't do anything now. So if I go back to Power BI, I showed you that this was online a second ago. I just killed the token that's behind the scenes. Let's refresh it. Offline, because I just deleted the token, so there's no more access there. So what you're seeing right now is that behind the scenes, the service principal was kind of the connector between those two things. So hopefully you found this video helpful. In the next step, what I'll show you in the future is going to be more focused on Power BI. So on the Power BI side, rather than doing this through the GUI, I'll show you guys how to use the Power BI API to do a lot of your Power BI automation, and part of it will be creating these tokens, or passing these tokens to the API. It's going to be actually pretty complicated because what we have to do is something called asymmetric encryption, but I'll walk you through it, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. One more thing I wanted to add. Make sure also, like, if you're going to be sharing this stuff, like in this case, I just shared my OAuth secret. I just wanted you to see that I am going back and actually deleting this type of information as well. So that's all.